Bullitt, 1968. Along with Paul Newman and Warren Beatty, Steve McQueen was the biggest of the younger male movie stars of the 60s. The UK had its share of exciting young leading men like Michael Caine, Sean Connery, Albert Finney, and Terence Stamp, but of the young sexy guys in America that were also genuine movie stars, it was McQueen, Newman, and Beatty. On the next level down was James Garner, George Peppard, and James Coburn. But for the most part, anytime one of them got a picture, it was because one of the top three turned it down. Producers wanted Newman or McQueen, they settled for George Peppard. They wanted McQueen, they settled for James Coburn. They wanted Beatty, they settled for George Hamilton. James Garner was actually popular enough to get scripts from time to time that weren't covered with the top three's fingerprints, but not often. The next level down was up-and-coming leading men like Robert Redford, George Segal, and George Maharis, and pop stars like Pat Boone and Bobby Darin, who in the 60s actually had legit movie careers. In fact, if he had ever taken his movie career seriously, the young movie star leading man who could have truly given the three actors at the top a run for their money was Elvis Presley. But Elvis was a prisoner of both Colonel Tom Parker and his own success. Elvis made 2 movies a year, and none of them ever lost money. Now, not all those Elvis movies were bad, some were better than others, but it's safe to say they weren't real movies. They were Elvis Presley movies. After McQueen dropped out of the role of the Sundance Kid before Redford, it was offered to Warren Beatty. Naturally, if Beatty did it, he wanted to play Butch Cassidy, a non-starter because that role had always been Newman's. But if they'd gone for it, Beatty wanted to do it with Elvis Presley at Sundance. But one of the things that made Steve McQueen so popular in the 60s, along with his king of cool persona and his undeniable charisma, was that of the top 3 actors, Newman, McQueen, and Beatty, McQueen did better movies. Once McQueen became a movie star with The Great Escape, he made a string of movies that were all pretty damn good. In the 60s, the only real dud in his filmography post The Great Escape is Baby, the Rain Must Fall. And that's mostly due to the ridiculous sight of Steve trying to play a folk singer. Whereas Paul Newman, for his whole career, did an incredible amount of lousy movies mixed in with some iconic ones. I mean, some of the movies Newman agreed to do over the years are really baffling. I suspect he just wanted to get out of the house. After Splendor in the Grass, none of Beatty's films are worth a damn before Bonnie and Clyde. Okay, maybe Lilith. But the material McQueen chose to do, compared to the other two, was consistently of a higher quality. But the reason McQueen's material was superior wasn't due to the fact that the actor was poring over all the material available and demonstrating his uncanny ability to choose projects. McQueen didn't like reading. It's doubtful he ever read a book of his own volition. He probably never read a newspaper unless there was a story about him in it. And he only read scripts when he had to. It wasn't that he couldn't read, he wasn't illiterate. Neil McQueen, his first wife, told me he read car magazines. And it wasn't that he wasn't smart. He could talk to you about engine displacement, how to break apart the carburetor of a motorcycle, or discuss armaments until you couldn't listen anymore. He just didn't like reading. So who read the material? Neil McQueen. The importance of Neil McQueen to Steve's success as a movie star can't be overemphasized. It was Neil who read the scripts. It was Neil who narrowed down the material. It was Neil who was good at choosing material that would be best for Steve. Steve's agent, Stan Kamen, would read 10 scripts that were being offered, then narrow that down to 5 and send those off to Neil. She'd read those 5 scripts, write a synopsis on the material, narrow it down to the 2 she liked best, and then tell Steve the stories and explain her reasons why she liked them for him, which would usually end up in him reading the one Neil liked the most. McQueen hated reading material so much, later in his career, he charged studios $1 million for just reading a script. Now, of course, the director was important, how much they were paying him, the location they were shooting the film at, all of these things were important. But so was Neil weighing in. Naturally, directors who worked with Steve before, that he liked, got preferential treatment. But if Neil didn't like the script, it was an uphill battle. And it was thanks to Neil's good taste and her keen understanding of both her husband's ability and his iconic persona that she steered her husband, starting with The Cincinnati Kid, into the biggest winning streak of the second half of the 60s. And Neil McQueen is what Elvis needed. Neil was also aware of something that action director maestro Walter Hill told me about McQueen. Hill worked twice as second AD with Steve, on both The Thomas Crown Affair and Bullitt, and then later, when he was a screenwriter, he wrote The Getaway. Hill told me, "Quentin, one of the things you would have liked about Steve is that while Steve was a good actor, he didn't see himself as just an actor. Steve saw himself as a movie star. It was one of the most charming characteristics about Steve."